How about now?
There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect. Brian Holmes,
Here.
Andy Kishitz,
Here.
and Gabrielle Amano.
Here.
Great.
Okay, so I guess the task in front of us is to walk through this decision and see if anyone has any questions, concerns. And, maybe we'll start just one page at a time. If people haven't had a chance, I know we had a new revision come through in the afternoon. So if you want to take a few minutes and just scan through, or if they already have, if they have any questions, certainly bring them up. And
I read through it briefly. I'm happy with the changes I saw. So
good. That's good. So why don't you bring the document up, Valerie? And
I'm sorry, what was that?
why don't you bring the document up and the most
Sure.
recent version, assuming that's, you don't know one that's changed, but if you do, that's fine too.
Sure.
And Attorney Horowitz and Joe, you've seen the document probably as Valerie's bringing it up.
Yes, I have.
Everything's current, so, okay.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have.
I can't tell from the annotations like on the side, but it doesn't sound like there's any contention items that'll take a lot of discussion. Is that?
Yeah, there are a
Accurate.
few items in the conditions that we should review. Attorney Horowitz sent over just a couple of notes this afternoon, so we should.
Yeah, I certainly will review, but I didn't know if there's any like big things that people are like, oh no, this isn't where we thought it was going, or, but we'll get to them, I guess.
Sure.
Yep, all right. So page one, pretty much what it is. Property location. So on the hearing opened, all right, hearing closed. So that would have been the July 21 date, is that right?
Oh, yes, that would. Thank you.
And the date of vote will be potentially August, whatever.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. All right, procedural history. One. Okay, so. Yeah. July 21, right? That's good. That's consistent. Andy, Brian, myself, Brad, and Gabrielle, right? Okay. For item 9, where it says the applicant funded an escrow to pay for all of the peer review expenses. So are all the expenses been submitted, and is there money in that escrow account?
Yes, I don't have the most current invoice. I don't have the July invoice yet, but there's still money left in that account. Typically, and what happens is that it's kind of folded into construction inspections or returned to the applicant at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at least at this point, it's you don't need to identify an amount, but it's fine for, it'll pay for all the expenses. I don't want to have it a decision and then have to say, oh, we have bills and no one's paid them, okay. That takes care of that question I had. All right. Okay, what page are we on now? Oh, yeah. All right. Motion to staff conducted. Oh, on the comments from on item 11 with regard to butters and residents. I know we had a bunch of back and forth on the energy efficiency or solar. Is that just covered under among other issues? Or do we need to call out?
I can add that in as well. Sure. Um,
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, anyone else has any items, I'm just, I did a quick read through the earlier version and made some notes, but then when the second version came through, I sort of spot checked it, but. Okay. Right, we're not gonna get them all, but at least some of the highlight items and.
Maybe traffic. That was another one that people were bringing up.
It's there, traffic noise design.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, I missed it.
Yeah, no. Mhm. Okay. When you scroll to the next page, Valerie, looks pretty good there. Findings. All right, so that first one was, we sort of definitely went through that in the hearing. Joe Pisnola, helped us guide that they met the jurisdictional requirements for the 40B eligibility. We know the statutory minimum for our housing. We're not at the level, so we're certainly behooves our local needs, so that's good. And this is all, those are the most current, right, Valerie? The 3.99% and the 69 subsidized housing.
yes.
Okay. Yep. So, initiative program. Good for me, yeah. Oh, it may have been on the prior page, but when we talked about items that are incorporated into do we have to list out the meeting minutes somewhere in the document?
No, I don't believe we do.
Okay, perfect. All right. I'm fine with page 4. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay, flip to the next page then. All right, so Bolton, right, Selectmen made it a lip. Local needs. Rental Alta. Water supply, 25% affordable. Properties located in the district. So those look factual and well written. Options, I'll probably look at a special notes. Okay. There. Let's see what the word is. Here. So, and just this area about the traffic impact and access. So was that accurate that they propose will have little to no impact on the operations? Was that the conclusion?
Yes, I believe the traffic study showed that most of the impact was going to be on the property itself, so that if there were delays, it would be seen on the driveway of 580 Main itself.
Okay, so I just when it said little to no, I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
if that was the right wording, but if that's fine. If that's how it was pushed. I know that'll be always a question of like, how could they ever say that? But, only because 117 is such a backed up road, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so fire department comments, police department comments, what public works comments. I didn't have anything to add on those. I don't know if anyone else does, certainly chime in. Conservation agent, yeah, and they completed that. That's good. Sign review board, I think that covered their synopsis. Okay. Okay. So item 3, section 3. Really was taking it there. Yep. So we don't have to note anywhere the different votes, just that they were ultimately approved. There were some that weren't unanimously voted on, but they were all passed.
Yeah, I think it's okay to handle it like this, and then have the minutes reflect the specific votes.
That's perfect.
But
That's perfect.
yeah,
Yep.
I know there are other ways of doing it too, if you want to have a table in there, for example.
I mean, as long as it's clearly documented somewhere, like where the minutes or where we went through it and whatnot, if it's unless the board has a preference, if they want a table attached that shows the individual, and I'm comfortable if it's in the minutes. Andy, you have any idea, any thought on that? You always are good for procedural or for
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the question was, in here, in this beginning of section 3, it talks about we took votes and the board granted relief from all requested waivers and exemptions. And so I asked, do we need to have, the record of the individual votes in the decision? And Valerie said, well, they'll be within the context of the meeting minutes. She said, although we could put a table in. And I was like, well, if they're covered by the meeting minutes, I'm comfortable, but do people believe that a table should be in the file or not?
Yeah, I don't see the,
Seems
I
like
don't,
overkill.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
no, I don't see the relevance to it at this point. If someone wants to look up the history, they can go to the minutes. I don't think why it has to be put in the
Yeah.
decision.
That's perfect.
I agree.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
But I did have a question, actually. We're bringing up this Exhibit B. Should Exhibit B also be mentioned on the bottom of page 3 where we talk about all documents include Exhibit A? Should we also add Exhibit B to that? Valerie wants to scroll back to the bottom of page 3.
Sorry, I was looking at my hard copy.
A little bit different. What that says at the bottom of page 3 is that Exhibit A lists all the documents that were submitted. So I assume Exhibit B would be listed on Exhibit A. Just circular.
If that's the case, then we're fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
it is. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect. Good question, Andy. So we left off, so, okay. Yep. So decision, so if we were to get through this document without any major edits tonight, there's a potential that we would just need a motion and then a second, and we could then update this section. All right. Conditions. So I think we went through some of these at the last hearing, but there's no substantial changes. That's covered by the 40B process. Damages to town roads, subsidizing agents, regulatory agreements.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask for a slight change to condition number 4?
Sure.
So
Let's bring up the condition and we'll see. Yep. Mhm.
yeah, So this just requires us to give you the regulatory agreement that we signed with DHCD before we sign it, which is all fine.
Mhm.
But then it's subject to review and approval by the board. And my only concern about that is that it's the DHCD form of regulatory agreement,
Mhm.
which they really don't allow change. Like we won't be able to make changes to. So the only acknowledgement that I'd like to get in here is that if DHCD doesn't approve a change that the board wants,
Mhm.
that basically DHCD's decision
The
trumps.
answer, right. Mhm.
I don't think that's controversial, but now, especially that I know Valerie is not going to be the one we're
Mhm.
dealing with, it would make me feel better to have it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I can chime in. We want to be careful about using the word approval,
Mhm.
which would constitute some future action by the board that the board could find as not being unreasonable and not approve it. So I think your review can be not unreasonably withheld, but
Uh-huh.
there's really no recourse
Okay.
here. The other issue here is that this is a LIP. And in the case of the LIP, the regulatory agreement will be tri-party and the town will be a signatory to the regulatory agreement.
Okay.
I believe that will be handled by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
So they're going to be in the same boat, that they're going to have to take the DHCD language, which is standard. It's the same with Debbie and her team. They can't make any changes either. So DHCD's in the driver's seat here. So
Joe, are you
I would-
suggesting
Should we
maybe we
change
just
it?
delete the words "and approval"?
Yeah.
I would just strike and approve.
That's
Oh, I
fine.
was gonna say, use verification instead of approval, maybe, or you could strike it all together, whichever.
I would say strike it because we haven't seen it, so we can't verify, couldn't be a review for verification that is consistent. When we look at the final plans, we don't want to use the word approval. We use that language, that the final plans are consistent with what was presented during the hearing and the approved plan, the approved preliminary plans. But here this will be the first time you'll see it.
Okay. So when it says, which shall not be unreasonably withheld, so it should not be, so our review would not be unreasonably delayed? Because we're
I
not.
would strike all of that.
Yeah,
You could strike all of it because
yeah.
you really, unless you put a time frame on your review,
That's right, yeah, so,
not going to withhold your review.
right. Or unreasonably take time to do it, that's. so-
Yeah.
So is that just your concern, Attorney Horowitz?
Mhm. Yep,
Perfect.
that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, good. Right. So, all right.
As point of order, Gerard, did Debbie actually introduce herself?
Oh, I'm sorry. You mean just as a formal matter? This is Debbie Horowitz.
Yeah, just, I
counsel
didn't know
for the
whether we had
applicant.
to.
Yeah, thank you. Debbie Horowitz, counsel for the applicant.
Thank you. Okay, so let's skip to page 8.
Just to point out, Mr. Chairman, when you were asking about the amount left in that account,
Mhm.
there are a couple of places here that you also have the right to require the developer to put more money in the account.
Mhm.
And 10A at the bottom of page 8 is one of them.
Right. So is this, would that also be covered in like item 6 where it says, you know, we intend to use Horsley Witten for review and then shall establish an escrow account? So we
You've
don't.
got- Right, you've got it in
Yes.
multiple places, exactly.
And those are all covered by right 10A, which is in the condition that talks about at least $10,000 at a certain point. Okay.
Right.
All right. 7, 8, 9. I think those are all standard and documented properly. Inspection fees, right? 10A, that was the
Yeah.
initial deposit to cover, and then right. Okay.
So I do have one thing I'd like to talk about on 10C, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Okay. Anyone having problems up to 10B? So 10C.
So 10C is in here because we raised the question, Jim raised the question about building permit fees.
Mhm.
Building permit fees have increased substantially since we filed our application. And we asked the board to basically grandfather us in to the fees that were applicable at the time. And that's especially true because I think of what we were just talking about, Mr. Chairman, we're funding all the costs and expenses of the building department that would otherwise be incurred in reviewing this project. So in a way, even paying the base, the prior building permit fees is maybe not 100% kosher, but we're not complaining about that. We would just like to have just to be grandfathered in to the fees that existed at the time we filed the application.
So how do we ensure that? I mean, the purpose is that I think they want to be sure that they're not additional costs of the town's going to have to be have a burden on because of the size of the project, the number of units. I don't know how that, we've never had a project like this scale, so I don't want to cut the town short where.
Yeah, that's, Mr. Chairman, that's where B comes in.
That's what comes in, Joe?
10B,
10B.
where the town's taking an initial deposit of $10,000 for the sole purpose of supporting the building department. So if they want to hire outside building officials, which some towns will do, or if they want to use that money for overtime for the existing staff, however they want to do it, it's seen as a recognition that it's a large project that's going to have a lot to do.
Mhm.
And it's an initial deposit. So we don't know how much that will be. It could go up from there, but it certainly benefits the developer as they're moving through the building process to get inspections in a timely manner.
Mhm.
And not see delays. So if they're moving fast, there might need to be, more staffing applied, and the building department has the ability to, through this 10B, ask for money for that. And if there's any issues between the developer and the building department, I think they can come back for clarification to the board on your writing of this condition 10B, and help mediate to work that out. So I think it's covered as far as not leaving the building department high and dry.
So
I have one.
takes into like the incremental potential versus C is just the actual building permit application fees. So,
Right.
okay, I see.
Yeah, I have a concern that the town not be high and dry if they have to, if an engineering issue comes up on either the building or some of the, hydrology or anything else that we not be.
Yeah, there's another condition in here that requires, the construction monitoring and allows, the board to re-engage the peer reviews for monitoring for that. That was the condition 6.
Right, I remember that, and there's another
Um,
section there as well, Brad. So we'll get to that, but
Right, so this condition solely pertains to the building department, and will pertain to their function in their role in the project, which their first role is to issue building permits. So there's a review process, and that review process on a project of this size can be daunting. So they may choose to expend some of this, additional resource to do that. And then the second thing that they have to do is the inspections, electric, plumbing, so forth, for those things. This is a large enough building that it will be what's known as controlled construction. So the building department is reliant under state, the state code, on the project architect and providing affidavits and certifications to the completion and adherence to codes, which takes a little, you can't equate it to, okay, a building inspector has to do all of these inspections on a single family home. Now just multiply that by 1,000 because this is such a big building. It doesn't work like that. Once you get to a certain size building, it goes into again, what's known as controlled construction, and it recognizes the limitations of a local building department and puts the onus on the project architect to provide those certification affidavits of completeness and adherence to code. So I truly think that the building department is not going to be left high and dry, and that this condition B is written in a manner that will give them the flexibility to make sure that happens.
so in C, then the proposed change would be the building permit application fees applicable project shall be those in effect at the submission of the 40B application.
Yeah, time of the submission of the comprehensive permit.
I do just want to note, I mean, in consideration of this, there is quite a large delta between the increase in the building permit fees and that $10,000. So, I think in speaking with the building department, there's, we did a review of our fees because we hadn't for many years. And so we were trying to, bring those fees up to a more typical amount. And so the $10,000 is kind of a drop in the bucket in a way for what the building permit fees could be.
Right, very valid, but that 10,000 is an initial deposit, and it says they'll be responsible for replenishing that as funds needed. So,
Okay.
right, as funds are needed during the course of the construction. So, as Joe was just indicating, he says, so it'll be incumbent on them to work that process, and
Yep.
this is just the application itself fee, but I don't
Right,
know
but
how
it sounds-
dramatic
yeah.
they've changed or not, but
Well, it sounds to me like the application fees were changed needless, probably for a reason. So I guess that's what Valley's trying to say, like that fee was.
Yes, right. I remember I think I was listened in on a selectman hearing or Mike Savageau, right?
Mhm.
They basically said, well, they haven't changed fees in several years, and they sort of did a look around of the neighboring towns to see where we stood. Some they didn't change, other things they did change. I can't recall the level of fees or the level of increase in, like, say, the building permit or something, but yeah, they did try to stabilize or right size our fees to but again, yeah, what is the protocol generally if you you apply for something and then, you know, within your period, things changed. I mean, there is usually provision for grandfathering.
That's the problem, Mr. Chairman, is we can't get a straight answer on that. Obviously, it's clear that all of the regulations and local bylaws and regulations in that were in place at the time of application are frozen for this application. In other words, if town meeting in the spring changed the zoning and added something that they would then not meet, they would not be compelled to ask for a waiver from that new requirement. You would be frozen at that time. Certainly, if there were application fees at the time of application, then those would be frozen. Here, we're kind of stepping outside of the comprehensive permit and into a piece of the local process that is not subsumed, which is the issuance of building permits.
Right.
And the application of building permit fees, which is local. That's not state mandated. The building department is working under state building code to issue the building permits, but the fees are locally imposed. So the question that I had at the last hearing when this issue comes up is that a waiver? Do they need to add a waiver, or can this condition where it's in a gray area serve to block that fee and have the building department respect what the board's decision says and impose the older fee? This isn't entirely up to the board. It's you could leave it as written, which would be an additional cost to the applicant. You could change it to the in effect at the time of filing an application for comprehensive permit, or you could ask the applicant to request an additional waiver and vote on a waiver.
Do we have a magnitude, Valerie, of like what the rate was in effect when the applicant filed the permit, and what the new rate is based on? And I assume it's based on 228 units, because each unit's going to have a building permit, right? Or is it?
It's based on square footage, I believe, of the buildings as a whole. I don't have the new versus old rates in front of me. I believe the applicant in a previous meeting said it was closer to a difference, or maybe a total fee of 100,000.
I think it was a couple of $100,000 difference.
Yeah.
That's significant. I mean,
Yeah.
and in the realm of trying to accomplish the 40B process, I mean, bringing affordable housing, I assume that would be a detriment, but that additional cost. But I guess
I'm inclined not to change it, Gerard, because I think there might be, due to the magnitude of difference between the two fee rates, and also because I don't think we know whether acceptance of fees at a lesser rate causes any additional undue hardship on the building department, having different billing at different rates, or maybe it affects their budget or something like that. I just don't know any of that stuff about the inner workings and the financials of the building department.
right.
I would want to accept the rates that they felt were appropriate and that the select board approved.
I agree with that. I agree with Andy on that.
Well, another possibility would be that the fees be fixed at today's date rather than the application date. Is there some state requirement it has to be at the application date?
Now,
No,
That's the,
think-
that's the gray area
Mhm.
is.
Yeah, I mean,
I-
it seems to me fair not to charge them more, from this going forward, but I certainly think we should be, up to today's date where the approval would theoretically happen. That would be, to me, ground zero, but that's my opinion.
Is there a way to maybe apply the difference to, because we're all talking about paying for the project, and I totally understand the board's concern that the building department, it's why we've not pushed back against all these other requirements that we fund things. Can the differential be put into this this account, this escrow account, to be used for purposes of covering the cost of this project?
That seems like a reasonable approach.
I don't understand. Are you asking to have the fees at the lower rate, but still pay the difference, would pay it into the escrow account?
Well, the difference, we could pay the fee at the higher rate, but have the difference be applied. I mean, the whole purpose of building permit fees, and there's a whole series of laws and case laws about this, is supposed to be to cover the cost of doing the job of the building department. So, and things that are in excess, if the court determines that, I'm not suggesting that the building permit fees are in excess here at this level, but if courts determine that fees are excessive, then they get considered to be a tax. And obviously this board and the building department can't tax. So I guess all I'm saying is that if we pay the fee that's supposed to be used to cover the cost of the building department anyway, can we have it? I was suggesting put the difference into this escrow account, but one way or another, can we just be clear that it's going to be used for these purposes?
I'm curious to know if we're able to use staff hours with that escrow account rather than just inspection fees.
It's in there.
It is, okay,
Yeah, your language already says that.
okay.
So if we went that route of the difference into an escrow account, how would you propose this C being worded?
I guess you could leave it at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't understand how that would be recognized by the building department itself. I mean, they're going to bill at one rate, but only receive income at a different level?
No, they're going to get the whole rate. They're just going to just use the money.
But not as a fee. They're going to have to account for that differential in a different manner.
Right, our staff would have to count their hours spent specifically on this project. Any administrative materials would need to be, itemized as well as the hours of the inspectors specifically.
That's what the 10B is envisioning, that because under 53G, that $10,000 initial deposit has to be put into a separate interest-bearing account tied to the project and can only be spent for that project. So what Attorney Horowitz is suggesting is that 10,000 be changed to the difference between the old fees and the new fees. Let's just say it's $100,000. So now that 53G account has $100,000 in it. And that, just as in when we're doing peer review, the applicant has the right to review the accounting on how that money is spent. And if it's not spent, then it's the the balance is returned to the applicant. So it would certainly mean the building department has to do it, as Valerie said, and then have to track it differently. But I think we already sent them down that road in 10B to have to spend that 10,000.
I guess the difference would just be with, you know, salaried employees versus town inspectors. But I guess if 53G considers those the same thing, then that would make sense.
I'm not sure where normal building fees go. Do they go into the general fund and that's that? Then the town just knows that, you know, there's money there for the added expenses to the building department. You know, this is a 50 or $60 million project. So the building permit fees here, I don't know what the old fee was, but you know, they're $800,000 or $900,000. So it's quite a bit of money generally. So if the building permit fees right now are $13.50 per $1,000 in value. If they were 10, then we're talking about, you know, $3.50 per $1,000. And it would be that money that would go into the 53G. The town would still get that other money, that $500,000.
I think the town would get it. I mean, honestly, although there's no client here to kick me, I'm not suggesting that the money would go into the account and then back to the developer. So I think that, because I can understand why people wouldn't want to go down that path. I'm suggesting that it just takes in the money as a fee, but then puts the balance of it into this 53G account. So then it does get used for all those purposes, but it does get used for the project. Nobody's high and dry. It's substantially more than an initial $10,000 funding, frankly. And, you know, if there's money left in the account at the end of the day, then I guess I would say, and I think Jim will just have to agree with me since I'm saying it and he's on vacation, that, you know, the building department would just keep the rest as a fee at the end rather than giving it back to the developer.
That sounds, I mean,
Do we have any precedent for accepting fees less than what is dictated?
I don't know that we've done that, but again, back to what Joe was saying, it's, you know, just because we haven't necessarily done it with previous decisions doesn't mean that it's not an accepted practice, right?
Yeah, I've been involved in 40Bs that have requested and been granted fee waivers, whether they be just for the affordable units, whether they be building permit fees, water and sewer connection fees, you know, whatever they be, they're locally imposed. So the waiving of them is within the purview of the zoning board. I think the devil is in the details of how we recraft B and C to memorialize what Attorney Horowitz is offering.
right. I mean, I do think that offer it seems much more substantial and covered under B. So that may be the best way to go than try to say, well, I don't know if we want to say, well, we'll waive the the fees, but so if there's a way to memorialize the town receiving the benefit of whatever incremental funds to be sure that they can do their job on this project with sort of project related funds, and that's perfect. for me.
So.
Yeah, I think you would change C to at the time of filing of the application of the individual application of the comprehensive permit. And then in B, you would change with an initial deposit of $10,000 to an initial deposit of the difference between the building permit fee calculated at the current fee structure minus the fee in accordance
Fee that-
with
At
10C
time of
below.
application. Right. Mhm.
But then, would we still want to establish an escrow account? Because the way that typically would work is that it would be then returned to the applicant. So,
I think we can specify that any funds remaining in that account
okay,
can be retained by the building department to cover, additional costs or something like that.
okay.
If that's the case, then what's the, if we're gonna have an account that's gonna have the difference in the difference in the cost, then what's the need to change it? Because essentially the developer's paying the same money.
It is a little different in that because we think that should be more than enough to pay for the additional hiring or additional staff time to do the work. And look, if it's not, the building department still has the right under these like 10B and the other sections to ask for more money.
Mhm.
But it doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't double dip, meaning we're already paying for the costs of the building department in reviewing the project, which we're signing up to do. But that it's not, we don't pay the same dollar in the building permit fee and $1 in the escrow account to begin with.
Mhm.
Would it,
And it also allows the applicant to review the expenditures. Under 53G, the applicant's entitled to see how that particular money, not the 10C money, but the 10B
Right.
money,
Okay.
how that's being spent.
Okay. That works for me then.
so C should read, in effect, the time of filing the comprehensive permit application.
Mhm.
Um,
Application period.
and then I have to figure out how to word that.
So you had a thought process of that language, an initial deposit of,
The initial in that 10B,
yeah,
Yeah,
yes,
starting with an initial deposit,
correct.
instead of saying of $10,000 made payable to the town of Bolton,
Mhm.
you could use Joe's language and say with an initial deposit of the difference between the building permit application fee, which would be due under the current
Fee structure.
building, I'm sorry, go ahead, the current base structure, and the actual application fee paid under 10C. Yeah, and I think the rest of that sentence comes out too, Valerie, because well, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Mhm.
And then I think you probably, just to round out the discussion at the end of that paragraph, you want to leave in the ability to require it to be replenished, but at the end of that paragraph, maybe any amounts of the initial deposit remaining in the account.
Or any remaining amount.
The residual. Mhm.
It's not really any remaining account. It's just because if you call for more money, we should get that back. So that's why I was tying it to the initial deposit.
Yeah.
So it could be any remaining amount of the initial deposit remaining in the account after issuance of the final certificate of occupancy. Does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah.
It shall be
No,
retained by,
That's good. And then, this is good because this gives the developer, well, it puts the onus on the town to do proper accounting of this money. Gives the developer the ability to review that accounting, especially if the building department comes back and says we need even more.
so Valerie, I think at the end of that, you want to actually say it shall be retained by the building department.
Oh, thank you.
I'll take it, but.
Yeah, thank you.
And I don't really understand the change we made to C, because to me, C now says that they're going to pay the fees that were the old fees that were in effect at the time of the filing of the comprehensive permit.
So it sounds like those fees go directly to the building department with no need for tracking how the town spends that funding.
Mhm.
And then the difference in the fees is going into an escrow account that we're using.
Yep.
I don't understand that. I thought the initial thought was that they were going to pay the full fees as they are now, and we would allocate some of that toward the toward 10B.
That's what they're,
To me, the way it's written is they pay the lower amount as fees.
no, they're paying two amounts that equal the current fee.
Right.
I think this satisfies that. I think this is just a different way of stating that.
Mhm.
What you're going for.
Okay, so 10B, you're saying it's $10,000 plus, is what you're saying?
No,
No,
let's
it's gonna be
just use the example that the building permit fee
Yeah.
today is $800,000. $500,000 will be paid under 10C, $300,000 will be paid under 10B.
Yep.
Okay, but those are based on today's fees?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, it says under the current fee structure.
Any final thoughts? I think it
I'm
works.
still not really comfortable because I don't know I still don't understand what effect this is going to have on the building department and their accounting.
Well, they're gonna have to track what they spend on the
It
project.
feels like we're pushing something down a town department's throat without their input.
We're making money available to them that if we're making money available to them to spend on the project, but they just have to account for it. And if they account for it properly and there's excess, they still get to keep it. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, don't they, if they run out of money, they just go back and ask more and then we can review it at that time?
Right, they still have the provision that they're responsible for replenishing as needed during the course of the construction.
The door isn't closed for any additional funds if an issue comes up. So,
I think the overall intent between B and C is we want the building department to be made whole on the economic burden to them to do this job of a major project where but for the rates in effect at the time of the application were low, then there'd be a concern that they wouldn't be able to, that they'd be operating at a loss probably to do this project. So I think between B and C, they're saying we're going to recognize that it's going to be some additional burden and they're going to fund it through this way. And if it's low, they can still ask for replenishment. But if whatever that amount is, if it's sufficient, that's what will be used. They just have to account for it. And if it's residual left, then they keep it if they've done their job right. They account for it properly.
I see what you're saying though, Andy. I mean, it is
Mhm.
less money to the town than the previous draft showed.
Mhm.
Actually,
Also,
but if they don't
the
need the
10
money, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When is that escrow account supposed to be established?
It would be prior to the issuance of the first building permit.
So how would you determine the total amount if building permits happen along the course of time? And we might not even know exactly how many, do we know exactly how many permits we'd be talking about?
We would have to do that work first to figure out exactly what the total cost of the project would be.
I mean,
But what
it's
they tend
by
to, what they
square
tend to
footage.
do, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Isn't it done roughly by square footage of the building as a starting point so that we know what the buildings are going to be size wise? So that gives you certainly a base point. And,
Yes. Yes, Mr. Reed, it is. It's used industry standard valuations based on square footage for the type of building. So developer doesn't come in and say it's 50 million. They come in with the square footage and there's a manual that has those valuations for the different types of construction. They set that fee, they set that valuation and then apply the $1,350 per $1,000 of value.
Well, this is why we have you, Joe, to give us guidance on this.
Mhm.
Are there any more questions or thoughts on this one?
I'm good with that now.
I'm all set.
So pre-construction meeting. No construction shall permit shall be issued until the applicant has all these items. Any questions from 11 through 12E? I think those are
I'm good.
required to be in there. That's good. And, okay. So only on F should that be BORNE? Mosquito borne. invasive species, we talked about that. And then, oops. And shall provide update board fund. So F and G here on the page 11, Valerie. And so evidence of the demarcation, prior iron pins, and then this is at least 40 hours written notice, period, then if construction. Is that right? Or there's something missing there, or?
No, I think that's correct.
Okay, we just look.
So,
That's it.
so it's just prior to commencement of construction, we would get at least 48 hours written notice. And then again, if it ceases for longer than 30 days, we'd get another 48 hours notice.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that somehow got broken up between F and G. That's fine. Simpson. Staging area, street sweeping, fill material, construction, let's see. Yep. Any concerns 14 to 19?
No,
Okay. All right. 20 signal timing. So these red these red changes, Valerie, were these coordinated between the applicant and you, or town council, and whose changes are those?
These are coordinated between myself, Joe, and town council. So this is not including the applicant's considerations.
Okay. Attorney Hollis, did you have any concern with section 2021 edits there?
20 is fine.
Mhm.
21, I know you talked about this, the board talked about this at our last meeting, and I know you feel strongly about it, which is fine. We'll do it. I just wanted to say a couple things about it. One is that we've already submitted and you guys have already reviewed in great detail traffic and transportation.
Mhm.
So I would ask that come out. I don't think you need us to do that again.
I disagree. I think we need to do
yeah.
that, especially since the original one that was taking place was done during COVID. But I think that's going to be a big part of what I think people want to hear and see. And I think if that's removed, people are going to ask why that was removed.
I guess I don't have any problem with having it in here. I don't think this is not actual, right? 20 will be that adjustment will be based on actual occupancy. The 21 narrative will be estimates based on this project, based on other projects that this applicant has done, based on things that the town, other town departments are able to tell, but none of this will be actual at this point.
Yeah, I think actually that's a good point. I think that what we would basically get from the applicant is the traffic study they've already done, because that they did do a COVID modifier to try to extrapolate what the difference may be. So I don't really know that, what else would be included in a traffic and transportation.
My only thing would be maybe just take another look at it, see if anything's dramatically changed since that was done. I mean, it's not, obviously isn't going to require a whole review again, but maybe
Well,
fine tune it.
you've got to understand the goal here. The goal here is to assess this project from a cost revenue standpoint. what is the revenue coming from the project in taxes? And what is the cost that the project is putting out? And I use the example of, do you have to hire another police officer? Does the traffic on the road, the increase in traffic on the road mean that the roads need to be repaved every 6 years instead of 7 years? So it's that type of fiscal analysis that many larger projects like this will do a fiscal impact study to tout that they're going to be net revenue, that the cost burden to the town is going to be less than the revenue generated in taxes, and that's what we're asking them to analyze. So it's okay if we put this many residents here, what is the impact to fire and safety, roads, open space, things like that, so that when each department is doing their forecasting to set their budgets for the next year, they can consider what they saw in this report. So if the police department says, look, statistically, I need one officer for every 235 residents, and now you're going to add 300 residents, I need another, so they're going to add that to their budget line item to hire another police officer. And then the FinCom can look at it and say, okay, here's the projections for the taxes, here's the projections for these costs, and they can do the planning that they need to react to the influx of this number of residents. So I think the board wanted it from the start. There was some pushback from that standpoint. It's there, you're going to get it. It will be a tool, but you've got to see it kind of in that light as far as what it's going to be used for, and therefore that should define what it needs to include.
Yeah, to me, the elephant in the room is the cost of schools. Since that's 65% of our budget, I think we need to know what
Exactly. I
the
was
impact
remiss
on that.
not to use that as the example, Mr. Reed, that yes, how many in this report, how many school age students are they anticipating? And therefore, what is the cost to the town to educate those children? So that's definitely a big part of this.
Yeah, I mean, all the other services that the town, fire, what's the impact? Do we need to buy another fire engine? I mean, there are all these financial impacts that we don't know what they are, and they need to be put into the queue. So that's what I'm looking for.
Would it make
I-
sense in that
I agree.
context to just add the word fiscal before impact to make that clear?
I'd be comfortable with that.
Yep.
I think that's in two places, Valerie.
Fiscal impact of town and the fiscal impact on schools. Okay. And 22, fire protection, radio report, linkage. This deals with the selectmen, memorializing what the selectmen and the applicant collaborated on to
Mr. Chairman, that's mostly true. The addition at the end of C, when you're ready to get to it, was new today.
okay. Well, I was in general referring to the linkage, what that came up, because we haven't had that in other applications. This is the first slip that we've been involved with the selectmen.
Sure.
Right. So A, B, fine. So C. Are you talking about this easement area?
Right, so the addition requires us also to provide, in addition to emergency access for like fire trucks,
Mhm.
requires us to provide a pedestrian access to the cart path, which I did talk to the applicant today and they're willing to do that. I think I just wanted to confirm and make sure it was clear in this language that this is pedestrian access only and we are not providing parking
Yes.
for anybody to come park. So I don't know if you can just add an easement for continued pedestrian access and then even in parentheses, just put but no parking.
Yes. With no public parking? Or with
No
no park?
parking for the cart path. I mean,
Yeah.
No parking on or along the park. Yeah. No, yeah. Mhm.
no public parking on the project site. And then I just think my other question is probably a town council question, but maybe you know this from talking to him, Valerie, or maybe you did, Joe, where you talk about necessary easement plans for action by the select board. Is that just the necessary vote to accept an interest in real property? Or is that, you think there's some other permit? Because I
No.
don't think,
No, that's it. Just
Okay.
the normal process for the board to accept a public easement.
okay, so maybe we just say by the select board to accept the easement.
By the select board to accept the easement prior to the issuance of documents, first document.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Right, you could change action to acceptance.
Sure.
Prior to, okay.
And there's a process there, but the board doesn't, we don't need to.
Right.
Right, no, that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. I just didn't know if you thought there was something else that needed to be done.
No, it's good. As I said before, we need to be careful about using the word approval. But acceptance is really the heart of what we're getting at there with acceptance of the easement.
Right. And then one other thing, and this may just me being a lawyer, which I can't help, but I think if we could just say, if we could all be, I'm not even sure it needs a change, but where it says the applicant shall provide this information prior to our CFO, we obviously can't control when the select board hears it or decides to take it. So we just want to be sure that this test is, we do our job and provide it prior to the CFO. And then the select
yeah,
board can
you
take
could-
however long they take. I don't, you know.
Just then move prior to the issuance of the first occupancy to after plans and documents. Or plans and documents for the two areas described above. Put it in there
Yeah,
and then require for acceptance by the select board is the last part of the sentence. So
Great.
your action is what prior to the issuance of the first occupancy is linked to.
great.
Or put it at the front of the sentence.
That works too.
Does this work as I put it here? So the applicant will provide the board all necessary easement plans and documents prior to issuance of the first occupancy permit required for acceptance.
You could put as before
As
required.
Yeah.
Be better.
All right, so are we good there? Then we move on D, E, and F, or?
Good with me.
Yep. So those figures are, I think, static from the hearing we had last time when they were represented, and so is what it is. Sidewalk, yep. You bring roll to 24, 25 and above, or below. Post-construction. As-built plans.
I erased all mention of CAD in here because I
Yeah.
don't have CAD.
Probably permanently responsible for all, filing, maintenance, inspections. Mhm. 27. So this was the preference section, which I think we saw in the last version. Again, it's changes. Certification, notify the town and when permits are issued for both units, okay. Recording a decision, subsidizing final approval, lapse. These also can be found in between master law and chapter 40, so. Valid until it's duly recorded. All these sites, like CMRs and those are all what they are, Joe and Attorney Horowitz, right?
Yes.
Okay. Scroll to section 4, 5, 6 rather. No, my Roman numerals. It's just formatting. Conflict condition. It's okay. Oh, well, yeah. I think we spoke about A through these items, A through F last time. Authorized permits. Okay. I think that's section item 4 is consistent with what we indicated earlier in the document as well, so that's fine. Record of our vote when we do that. On August, right? That's a regular signature section. Filing of the clerk. And then we
The
have
last ones are just the
all the
record documents.
Mhm.
Don't need to go through all of them. And then I think exhibit C or B is the waivers.
Mhm.
Um,
So this was the intent, this was the actual waivers that were in that June 23rd document, correct, that we looked at last time?
yes, to be clear, I did not edit that document. It just added it in. So it's as written from June 23rd.
Mhm. And that's as what we discussed and voted on, so that's fine.
Yep.
Mhm.
And then there's the offsite parking plan.
Mhm. And is that the end of it?
That's it.
Wow.
Mr. Chairman, I missed one technical thing.
Oh, lost your short, Red, what's that?
And if you go back up to condition 12B, Valerie,
Sure.
please, on page 9.
Yeah.
There's still a reference in here to a disposal works construction permit under Title V, and we're not subject to Title V.
Yeah.
Yep.
C, 12C
Yep.
takes care of that, so B could be just struck.
Deleted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. So that automatically renumerate everything and will be good. So at this point, it doesn't look we have any major edits to the document other than what was edited as we're reviewing it. There's no, none of these items we believe would have to go back to town council for review, or, right?
I think this is fine as is. I'm confident that they would be accepting of these edits.
Right. Is all, the point to that is that if this is in sum total that the decision as proposed now, then we would just have to say a motion to accept the decision as edited here, and then if that passes, then we would just have to do a second motion to then have that same process of allow me to sign on behalf of the board once it's buttoned up and cleaned up for the edits. Is that correct?
Yep.
Mhm. Joe, you see anything?
We can't have that part of one motion?
Oh, I'll defer to Valerie. I think we seem to broke them up before, but you know, we can do it one day. That's fine. But Joe, any last minute guidance? You think it's good?
I think it's good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and no remorse on the terms, Attorney Horowitz? No, okay. Then yeah, I think we should entertain that first motion.
Let's put it to bed.
Okay, that sounds like a good motion.
Hey, I'm for that.
I motion to approve the comprehensive permit as revised tonight and to authorize the chairman to sign on behalf of the board.
Second,
Seconded. Go ahead. We got 2 seconds.
And those in favor, Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Brad Reed,
Yes.
Brian Holmes,
yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes,
and Gabrielle Amano.
Yes.
okay,
Unanimous.
unanimous, that's a good thing. Should be a good project for the town with get our affordable housing stock and, you know,
Get some rentals.
rentals.
Great,
mix it
yeah.
up, you know, so.
Thank you
Great.
all for all of your hard work on this. I know it's been a long haul and a big project, and I know the team really appreciates it.
Thank you. It's been great
you-
working with you.
Thanks for working with us, you know, I mean, overall, it was a fairly smooth process, you know.
When are you planning to turn the key on this project? This point?
I unfortunately can't answer that question. There's still actually a fair amount of permitting. There's the wastewater treatment plant, the private on-site well being the two probably longest, most complicated lead times. We're in the soup, we're in the mix with the Concom, but we need an order of conditions also.
Mhm.
So I know everybody's going to go as fast as they can now, in particular now that we have this decision. So this is great. And but it won't be in the next 6 months for sure.
All right, well, thanks, folks. Thanks to the board for, again, this has been a slog. It's a
Yeah,
year. plus.
congratulations.
And we've had a struggle. Joe, thank you for
Yeah.
participating. keeping us
You've
honest.
just brought the town above 10%.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yep. We might be seeing less of you, Joe.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot less of me.
As-
Hopefully we
Not
can keep in touch
necessarily
with
a
you,
good
though,
thing.
Joe, right?
I'm sorry?
I hope we can still keep in touch with you though.
Yes, yeah. Anything else you need, get a variance request and you need some input, I'll.
Oh,
be
even
happy
just
to.
to check in and see how you're doing. Yeah, you've been a good resource to this town.
August 9th,
Yeah, we still gotta finish Mallard, so
Right.
Yep, yep.
not rid of me yet.
We'll
Yeah,
see you
put the
on, we'll
second-
see you on
we're gonna put the
Tuesday.
Second feather in Valerie's cap.
Yep.
I'm
Right,
sure we'll
so-
be speaking, Valerie.
Yes, of course. Thank you so
All right,
much.
Do we have a motion to adjourn then, Valerie? Do we have to do
Sure.
that?
Yeah, I motion we adjourn.
Thanks. Brian,
Second,
right,
And those in favor, Brian Holmes,
Yes.
Brad Reed,
yes.
Andy Kishitz,
yes.
Gerard Ahern,
yes,
and Gabrielle Amano.
Yes.
All right.
perfect. Well,
Thanks.
thanks.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Guys, good night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Joe.
Woo-hoo.